think now is the best time ever for somebody that's looking to make a transition from the military or to retire from the military and continue that mission impact and do so in a way that I think has never been more consequential for our nation and the world. I truly believe that this modern era of technology is going to be more important than the Manhattan Project and the space race combined.
This is All Quiet on the Second Front, podcast where boring conversations around defense tech and national security come to die. Join me, Tyler Sweat, and my Second Front homies as we dismantle the mundane and cut through the bureaucratic bullshit to demystify the world of defense tech. But be warned, this is not a typical government podcast. Are you ready to get weird? What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Tyler Sweat. Welcome to another episode of All Quiet on the Second Front, the podcast where boring defense talk comes to die. I was finally able to pin one of my good friends down to come down and spend a little time with us. Larsen Jensen, Harpoon, most recently with the Black Flag announcement, I think generated a ton of action in the community. Brother, thanks for being here, man.
Tyler, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Hell yeah. So I mean, we were joking about it before. We've known each other forever. For those, maybe the 5% of people listening who don't know who you are, like a little bit about you, your background, kind of your story, and what you're working on getting after now, brother.
No, I appreciate it, Tyler. I hope it's, I'd be flattered if it was only 5% who didn't know who I was, but it's probably 95% who don't know who I am. So for the sake of those that don't, my name is Larsen Jensen. I'm the founder and general partner of Harpoon Ventures, early stage dual use and defense tech investment firm that specializes in investing in seed and series A and pre-seed stage companies as well. We've been around since 2018. Prior to starting Harpoon, I had the privilege of working at Lightspeed and Andreessen Horowitz. Prior to that, I had the privilege of serving my country and our country in the United States Navy, more specifically in the Navy SEALs. Before joining the Navy and joining the Navy SEALs, I also had the privilege and the honor of representing our country on 2 Olympic Games in the 2004 and 2008 Beijing Olympics, where I had the opportunity to swim with Phelps and guys like that. So it's been a wild ride thus far. It's been a true honor to represent our country in multiple different careers and the playing field, the battlefield, and now in sort of the investment and startup function. And it's something that I'll continue to do until the day I die.
Dude, it's goes without saying, it's a pretty impressive sort of experience arc there, right? Those are,
thank you.
Each one on its own was like a career defining thing. So, you stack all of that. What was it like? I think you probably are the same as me. I spent a lot of time helping folks transition, out of the mission defense, intel. They see what's happening in the community, right?
Yeah.
They see the rise of sort of this private capital, but that's maybe a little bit more mission oriented. They see the rise of these startups and tech companies. One, what was it like for you and sort of what drew you into that? And two, how do you sort of help, or what advice maybe do you give to that next guy or gal up?
This is, I think, one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I think it's something that's near and dear to my heart and probably near and dear to your heart as well. And everybody that's made a career change, but more specifically, a career change from public service and serving our country into the private sector to try and find that same kind of mission orientation, that same community, that same brotherhood. It's extremely challenging. And I think everybody, at least speaking from my experience, goes through a little bit of an identity crisis to try and figure out, who am I post-service? How do I continue to have this mission impact and serve this higher calling? It's something that I think we take for granted a little bit, especially in the military. It's one of those things where you don't really realize that you have it until it's gone. And when you step outside and you step out of uniform and you're looking for that next thing, it's daunting. And at least for me, went through a little bit of an identity crisis. Like, who am I now? I really wrapped up a lot of my prior identity. And this is probably very similar for most people in the career that they have. Like, I am a swimmer. I am a SEAL. I am whatever, this. And at the end of the day, none of those things are truly who I am. They're things that I do. And there's things that I think are drivers in those experiences that lead up to who I am, but the career doesn't define who I am as a person. And so I think there's almost this more, macro view that I think everybody has in terms of what makes them tick. So when we got out of service and when I got out of service, I got out in 15. So it's been 10 years. It's crazy. At this point, I've spent more time out of service than I have in, which makes me feel old and washed up, but I think I still got it. I did Murph on Memorial Day and put up some solid numbers, and at least for my age. So I'm pretty pleased with that. But when I got out of the military and was trying to join the private sector, it was not as apparent as it is today that you could have the mission impact that people now currently do who are getting out. I think this is the golden age in a lot of different ways. It's the golden age in defense innovation. It's the golden age of people who are formerly spent a career in public service to get out and have a very similar mission impact to what they had inside of uniform. I actually was talking with one of our mutual friends. He got out of the Army at 18 years. 18 years. He put in his papers to build a defense tech company. Everybody thought he was crazy. Arguably, he might be, but I think for the right reasons. And he's been operating this business for a little bit over a year now. And he believes that he's having a greater mission impact now from the commercial sector, from the private sector than he did in uniform. And this is a guy who has done, everything you could imagine inside of uniform. And so I think you have anecdotes like that. And that's not to say that you can't have tremendous impact in. I think it's just to say that you can have conveniently and interestingly even more mission impact in unique ways from the private sector that I don't think were really afforded to guys like us 10 years ago. And so when I got out, the normal career progression was like, oh, you're a military guy, leadership, management, performance under pressure. You're maybe good to join a Fortune 500. Maybe you'd be good in a sales or a biz ops role. Maybe you could, manage some people at McKinsey or at some of the consulting firms. That was sort of the options that were available. And for whatever reason, those things just didn't really make me tick. What made me tick was trying to solve some of the problems from a technology standpoint that I saw while in uniform. The majority of things that we had the opportunity to work with were somewhat legacy, to be frank. We were fighting the GWAT with yesterday's technology today. It was the old saying that we'd have. And of course, there was exceptions. We had some, fantastic technology. Palantir was just becoming adopted. We had, unmanned, aerial vehicles, and we're starting to have some loitering munitions and things that were really moving the envelope or pushing the envelope. But it wasn't widely distributed. It was, only a few special mission units effectively that got to use some of these things, and everybody else still was rocking the binocular, night vision. Not even the duals, and certainly not the quads. And so I was like, how is it possible that I have such innovative technology in my personal life with the iPhone and all these other things that I could do online, but a lot of that hasn't transcended defense? And so I dove headfirst into Silicon Valley to try and figure out what the best in the business were building and how some of that could cross-pollinate into the world of national security. This whole dual use initiative, which when we were getting out was just getting started. DIU was getting started. AFWERX hadn't yet started. There was a lot of inertia towards the incumbents and not much inertia towards startups. And I felt like that was just philosophically wrong. If anybody deserves the best technology first, it should be the people that go into harm's way and have signed up to risk their lives for our country. They deserve the best immediately. They don't deserve the worst later. And that was, I think the status quo, and I still think is in many ways. So a lot of things to dissect there. But, long story short, I think now is the best time ever for somebody that's looking to make a transition from the military or to retire from the military and continue that mission impact and do so in a way that I think has never been more consequential for our nation and the world. I truly believe that this modern era of technology is going to be more important than the Manhattan Project and the space race combined. Because I think it's happening across every domain. It's not just a modern space race being led by SpaceX, but we have an energy race, we have an AI race, we have a cybersecurity race, which intersects very, bluntly with the AI advancements that we have, where you have these permutating cyber attacks that are extremely hard to defend against. And there's a geopolitical imperative against a adversarial nation out there, at least in my opinion, with China and Russia as well. So I think it's on all of us to continue to make a difference. And uniquely, I think that industry is coalescing around this now more than I ever would have thought.
Yeah, it's two big points in there, I think, that are maybe glossed over a lot when folks are or maybe outside the industry thinking about coming in. And one is right, that ability to have an impact. I remember I was still in uniform, and it was like, you either were, a true believer and you were, hey, send me, I'll hit the target,
Yep.
or you were like somebody slimy and greedy and like make and like those two, there just wasn't a Venn diagram. They were like
Yep.
just two separate circles. And you're like, oh man, I was so wrong. I can make a 10x impact. Like, and I can still go to my son's basketball game and like we can have dinner at
Yeah.
home. And like that took me, same as you, it took me a long time to realize that like mission and life could coexist.
Yep.
And then industry coalescing sort of around, and the industry is the right way to frame it, because it's private capital, it's the allocators, it's the builders and the operators, right? You've got this time, and it's the first time I've ever seen it like directly aligned. It's almost like a mission eclipse,
Yeah.
right? Where it's all overlapping. And if you want to come into the community, if you're thinking about, hey, I've got an idea that I think can make an impact, hey, I've got a team that I think can deliver, you've got places to go now. And I'll use that sort of like long-winded monologue as a
Yeah.
wind up into like, talk to me about and talk to everybody about Black Flag and sort of what you're going there. Cause I think
Yeah.
you're seeing more folks come in. I think the government has tried. I think it's a great example of like why the government shouldn't do some things. Is we've now got like 30 something innovation shops, and if you don't know if you're talking to the right one until you've probably spent 6 months and realized that like they don't have a procurement arm or like they don't
Yeah.
have funding, you're like, son of a bitch.
All the mistakes you made early on, all the mistakes I made early
100%.
on, and
Dude,
then
I've
like,
been in every one of those short
every
rooms
single one
by
of them.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's
100%.
Black Flag? How does that fit
Sure.
in? Like, how do folks think
Well,
about it? Because I know I
I,
get a million questions about it.
well, yeah, I'm thrilled to have your involvement and for you to be a mentor and much deeper things that I know that we're going to be announcing here in the coming days and weeks. But I guess fundamentally, I think it's helpful to set some context here. So, as we said earlier, the ecosystem has changed. More and more people, more and more smart people, are really opting into this space. Back when we used to go to the events that we went to, there'd be 20 of us max, right? Maximum, sort of, who had this mentality of trying to create some like technology and acquisitions reform, and that we needed to do things better, and that we weren't based on our own shared experience and lived experience, having been downrange and experienced sort of the opportunities and shortfalls that we've had. We felt that we could do better by working more hand in glove with the technology ecosystem in Silicon Valley and those technologists. But it was still anomalous. It wasn't widely popularized. Most people were still working on it in secret. It wasn't socially acceptable in the region, to be frank. And then in a few short years, things have changed. And, I'd say it's pretty much occurred since the Russian invasion of Ukraine that there seems to have been a light bulb that's gone off in the past 3 or 4 years in the industry that, hey, we need to build for a more secure and prosperous United States, a more secure and prosperous, Western philosophy broadly. And so what's happened is there's many more founders and technologists and builders and Gen Zers who are opting in to building for our country and building for the mission. But one of the things that I've observed, and I imagine you've observed as well, is that there's a lack of support for those people to know where to start and how to get going. I think we can almost take it for granted that they're smarter now than we were then. These are more
Oh, yeah.
brilliant people that are coming in, but that doesn't change the fact that a lot of them are industry outsiders and don't have the scar tissue and the lessons learned about where to start and how to do it. Most of the founders that I talked to at an early stage don't know what a SAM, a cage, a DUNS is. They don't know the difference between a SIBR and OTA, FAR-based contracts. They don't know how to talk to the PMs. They don't know what a PM even is. They don't know what a PEO is. They don't know all this acronym soup that I'm throwing out here, which I still get confused about because it's a lot. And I think about acronym overload from my time in service and then thereafter. And so what we realized that there really wasn't a supporting function to help these founders break into the market more efficiently. And that's why we started Black Flag. So Harpoon is in the tent pole position on this. We're in the lead position, trying to exude some leadership into the ecosystem where we can coalesce others who have a very similar mission or the identical mission out there, whether that be Incutel, Shield Capital, many other venture firms are working with us on this as well, whether that be folks like Palantir, folks like Second Front, and others like that. And we're also sort of working with some of the more I guess traditional, the primes in the space to try and figure out how they can become involved in this. And we could create this nexus to support the next generation of founders to build for something that's really important. And I think one of the distinctions of this industry versus maybe the SaaS industry or the cloud industry or what have you, like self-driving, bicycles or any of that stuff, is there's a real mission here. And there's real strategic importance in it. And the work that we do here benefits our way of life, makes us more secure. It protects our brave men and women as they go downrange. It helps them do their jobs better. And so I think as a result of that, you get sort of this phenomenon where people are more willing to collaborate, more willing to help, because it does transcend us. It transcends me as a venture fund. It transcends you as a CEO. It's all about red, white, and blue and our allies and protecting our way of life. And I think if we approach it with that philosophy, we have the opportunity to really do something special in our country and do something really special for the world. But if we approach it, I think traditionally, the way traditional venture capital works, where everyone's sort of like a frenemy, everyone's collaborative but is also competitive. If we approach it the same way that we do traditional, business in terms of SaaS or AI or other things like that, I think we're going to limit ourselves. I think this is truly a once in a generation opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity where a rising tide raises all boats, and that's why we created Black Flag.
Yeah, I mean, amen, brother. Right? Like, I think it is far too difficult for a non-industry founder operator, to understand how to navigate. Like, you're starting to
How long
see,
did it take you?
dude. I mean, I'm flattered that you think I figured it out. I'll tell you,
Yeah, no, I mean,
at
seriously,
least once a week, I'm like, what the fuck? What is that? Like, what do
what
you
is that?
mean? What do you mean that thing's there? And I'm like, been doing this well over a decade now. And I'm like, I learned something somewhat material at
Yeah,
least
every
once a
week,
week. And I'm like,
every week.
why is this not written down somewhere? And like, I've read all the policies. I helped write some of the policies in another life.
Yeah,
Like, and it's very difficult, right? There's no, I spin it around a lot when I talk to folks on the Hill. I'm like, hey, Congressman, you guys look out at, just the department, for example. Who do you look to as like the technical leader? Who imparts the opinionation on like how the department engages with, the 50 billion of private capital that's been injected into defense
yeah.
tech? About all the non-traditional defense contract. Is that the team at DIU? Is that DoD CIO? Is that DISA? Is that like left to the services? Is it
Yep.
some RCO or something like that? And like, it's not anybody's fault. I mean, it's somebody's fault,
Yeah.
but like, everybody's
We should
trying
find out
and
whose fault
working.
it is. Yeah,
Dude,
I don't know if yeah,
there's
somebody out
somebody
there.
somewhere. Yeah, but I mean, I think
Somewhere.
that, to your point though, on the opportunity, you talk about that opportunity right now that like Black Flag is helping to reduce or maybe deobfuscate some of that. I think there's opportunities in the government too to be like, hey, and I mean, for me, it's like DIU's kind of the easy. Like, I think they've
Yep.
kind of got pole position on it, but like,
Yep.
somebody has to be the opinionated front door so that we can continue to have 45 billion of private capital injected in to be like
Yep.
a 6162 offset. Because at some point, if it's left to folks like me and you to figure out how to fight through short rooms, that's not scalable, right? That
No.
capital is going to eject and it's going to go onto the next grocery delivery app or
Yeah.
shitcoin or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there'd be
I
a
like
lot of
my
pro
groceries
clutching.
delivered. I like my groceries
Peace.
delivered, to be
Yeah,
fair.
dude,
But
I'm a
yeah,
huge fan. I
so,
didn't need like 70 of them at the same
yeah,
time,
true,
but
true.
like could have done with 7.
Yeah.
Um, you talk about that, right? So we've got opportunity. There's definitely sort of some confusion or barriers or complexity. I'm going to ask sort of the downside first, and then I'll ask the more
Yeah,
optimistic as we sort of turn the corner here. But
let's do it.
as you look out, we've talked rising tides, once in a generation. Like, give me what you're worried about. Like, what's your pessimistic take on where we are right now or the future?
I think I have two pessimistic takes, or maybe three, actually. So maybe too many. I think a pessimistic take is something you alluded to earlier, is that are we overfunding this market? I think it's a common question everybody asks at every investment cycle, probably since the beginning of time. Did we overfund the internet? Did the .com bubble? Did we overfund the cloud? Did we overfund mobile apps? Did we overfund crypto? And now are we overfunding defense? And I think, to me, the answer is probably yes. We probably are, but that still doesn't mean that there's not going to be transformative winners that come out of this. No different than Amazon and all those other folks came out of the .com bubble. So I think that great folks are emerging and are coming through this, but I think that actually has further reaching implications than other sectors, because if we overfund it and do it wrong, and the companies that we invest in don't achieve programmatic success inside of the government broadly, whether that be a missile company, a jet company, or an energy company, or whatever, or a rare earths company. It really doesn't matter. Across the board, if we trick ourselves into believing that something's going to be the case and it doesn't materialize, I think you could get capital retreat from investing in this space, which I think is a net negative for our country. And so that concerns me. But on the to counterbalance that, I think we have more brilliant founders than ever before opting in. So I think there's reasons to be optimistic that actually that capital has great places to go to work behind people that are extremely entrepreneurial and are going to lead us to a prosperous future. The other thing that really concerns me is that,
dude, never in my life that I think I would see YC companies with a defense premise.
never,
Like,
never.
Would have bet the farm that it would never happen, and now I'm
Yeah,
like,
totally.
well, shit.
Shows you how good of an investor we are. If we wouldn't even have like forecasted that this would be what it was, and so
This
or
is
is
this
what
is
it is.
why
And
I'm
so,
this is why I'm at the
yeah.
kids table. So
Yeah, well, listen, I feel like I'm at it too. I think the other thing that concerns me is that if China reaches AGI before the United States, or quantum supremacy before the United States, I think it's very similar to controlling space during the space race like we did, and how we went head to head with the Soviets and how we effectively won that. I think it's very similar to the nuclear arms race, where we effectively won that, but it became much more complicated thereafter. So I think we have a similar consequence here, and I think we need to move with a similar sense of urgency. And so I think that's something that concerns me. But I also am a big believer in free market capitalism. And the way that our process operates, I think by allowing the free market to operate over time, I think that clearly wins versus state mandated socialist or communist processes. So I'm net positive on that, although I do think it's something we should take very seriously. And I guess the final thing that I'd have that's a concern of mine is acquisition reform and actually getting things to be done at a speed of relevance. And it is something that I don't know if I'm as optimistic as I should be on. There's certainly been way more innovation front doors that exist now than ever, more now than ever. DIU uses the OT very, very effectively. Many people that are newer to the space believe that this is a new authority and a new thing versus, as with so many other things, an old authority that was created back 50 years ago and is now being repurposed and reinvigorated. I hope that we can do that well on a go forward basis. I'm concerned that it's not happening well enough. And in line with that, there's a lot of this ecosystem that I took for granted as a warfighter and breaking into this career. We were told, probably like you were, that any piece of kit or any gadget and gizmo that we had was the best and has been through a rigorous process and was selected based on its merits of performance. And that's not how this works.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep.
Like I'll go to war over that one. That's not
like
how this works.
Scene in Elf, like you sit on a throne of lies. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. A throne of lies.
Yeah.
And that's just not how the process works. It's remarkable how politicized, not in terms of like election politicized, but in terms of just the politicization of the procurement and which solutions we use and what's in whose district. And it's not a best capability wins market, which is tremendously frustrating. To me as a former service member, it's tremendously frustrating given that like my best friends in the world are still serving, and to sort of see behind the curtain and realize that is sort of frightening to me. Uh, I think we do have a generational opportunity now with a lot of the reform that's going on with Secretary Hegseth and with President Trump to try and change a lot of those things. The fact that we have more technologists involved, people like Elon, et cetera, who have proven that they can outperform government programs with what SpaceX has done on the launch side and on the critical infrastructure with Starlink side of the house on a fraction of the money that would otherwise be spent. I think there's room to be optimistic, but I think that's probably the central thing where I think all this breaks is if we don't fix this to be more in line with how any big successful company would buy technology and embrace a new capability, whether that be Amazon, Apple, or any of these big guys, Meta. I would hope that the government starts to work a little bit more like them, but that might take an act of God. So we'll see.
Yeah. And I think too, like, it's funny. Acquisition reform is probably the most oft talked about thing. I think sometimes, and this might be a byproduct of the think tanks and sort of the beltway and just the inertia that it creates, but we try to slug like this one silver bullet solution for everything instead of saying, you know what, like we can, and whether it's the stuff in like the Forged Act, Senator Wicker's Act of, hey, a non-traditional, here's how we define it, and here's how we create pathways. Like, I think there's opportunity to say, I can't change the way you buy, SaaS and the way you
Yep.
buy aircraft carriers is with like the same 100 words. I think I can change the way you buy software. I
Yep.
can change the way you scale a prototype that's successful. I can do, and then start there. I think the challenge we've had is like we start with the entire freaking elephant and we're like,
Yep.
this is really big. This is hard. Instead of being like, hey, I'm gonna chop the left leg off
Yep.
and we're
Yep.
gonna go
Yep.
from there. And I mean, it sounds simple when we talk about it. It's like that's where I think I see a ton of opportunity because then it harnesses the goodness, right? Like you talk about free market, American ingenuity. You talk about,
Yep.
and I see the same thing you do, right? Like the caliber of founders and operators that are coming into this space right now. I mean, humbling is an understatement. Like
Yep.
every single one of them is better at almost everything I think I'm good at than I am.
100%. Yep.
And it's
fortuitous we started
unbelievably
when we did, or else we wouldn't have a job.
I'd I'd be outside shaking a can right now. Like
Yeah.
it's unreal watching what these folks are doing, but we've gotta, the old guys in the game now have to continue to sort of hit that next ridgeline so we can leave the door open for the next folks to come through. And that's where I think the community can start to drive. You've got folks like Bonnie Evangelista, who's up at GSA doing some of the far rewrite. You've got folks who, have clicked the I believe button on the inside. And we've got to find ways to help them find ways to advance the mission and get quick wins. Because if we leave it to a full legislative policy rewrite, like,
Yep.
man, it don't matter who SecDef or like that's got to fight through a divided chamber of commerce or Congress, and
Yep.
that's so. I guess share a lot of the optimism. I recognize like we've got to put more in our backpacks right now to go
Yep.
drive this forward, and man, it's the best time possible to be doing it. So I'll use this as like the transition into the last question, which I'm always interested where it's gonna go. So Larsen's king for a day, or Poseidon for a day. We'll make it appropriate.
There we go. I like
Yeah,
that.
you've got the trident of power.
Yeah, we got
instead of a magic wand.
Harpoon. Yeah, there we go.
See, I see it. You can change one thing. What do you change and why? It can be work, life, society related, whatever it is. So
I think it goes back to what I just mentioned. I would change Uncle Sam to buy like a successful company privately. I think that I understand why the acquisition process is set up the way that it is. We
Yep.
certainly don't want corruption. We certainly don't want fraud, waste, and abuse. But the system can be gamed so much that effectively you get that as a byproduct based on the way that it is. And the fact that if the second an RFP is out, that it's already been shaped by an incumbent to effectively know who it's going to, I think there's no way that accomplishes the intent that was premeditated in coming up with this whole process in the first place.
Yep.
I'm not an expert at this, but I have to imagine that if you engage in fraud, waste, and abuse at Apple or Amazon or any of these big companies, and you buy something for the wrong reasons, you're probably going to jail. No different than you would for doing that as a government buyer. So I think that we have systems that are more innovative commercially than we do in the government sector. And I think that if there's a way to streamline it where truly the best capability reaches the hands of the people that need it, that's what we need to do a better job of. And you brought up the think tanks and things like that. I don't know why we have any of them. I really don't. I think we need to get rid of all of this. So King for a day, get rid of all these think tanks. I'm sure some people are going to hate on me for saying this, but if you think about it, you as a CEO of Second Front, me as effectively the CEO of Harpoon, I don't listen to what consultants tell me. I really don't care. I listen to what the builders and the entrepreneurs and the people in the trenches, in this case figuratively, the people who are in the arena are building. I don't need to listen to the academics who lead us astray every step of the way. And I think that's a problem that we get is we abdicate responsibility to somebody else versus taking it on our own shoulders through this process. People think that that's risk mitigation. I think it's cowardice. People are not confident in making their own decisions and standing behind it, and they just point the finger at somebody else, and ultimately that leads to no responsibility. If I made investment decisions based on what a McKinsey report said, I wouldn't have a job. If you made go-to-market, decisions based on what a think tank said, I think you'd be out of a job too. Second Front wouldn't be successful. I don't know why our policymakers abdicate their responsibility to people that don't have skin in the game. And I think we need to trust that people have skin in the game. And if you do have skin in the game, you should be held responsible. If you do something incorrect, you should be fired. But you also deserve the praise and appreciation of a grateful country, which I think Elon deserves for all that he's done to ensure that we stay on the forefront technologically against our adversaries around the world. So maybe a spicy take. Sure, some people won't like it, but that's I'm totally fine with that.
I get it though, right? It's and I think there's an aspect of some of the old tenets, when you're in command, be in command.
Be in command. If don't just say this, I read this report and I did this because of this report and it's not my fault. You're in charge.
I'm reminded of that old it's a Tecumseh quote that I'm definitely gonna misrepresent somewhere. But seek to beautify and perfect all things in your life, right? If your job is X, you should relentlessly pursue how do you perfect how you contribute to that, the role you play in there. And if you're abdicating that, I think one that probably makes it more challenging for you to have conviction. It almost makes it by nature somewhat more transactional. And that's likely not why people go to the polls to elect people, so that they can go read a report and just do that. If that was the case, just flip it around and get rid of Congress and just have
exactly.
Have the think tanks duel it out once a week, and we'll have a boxing match every Friday, and whoever wins, it's their policy.
That'd be equally entertaining.
Yeah. No, dude, I mean, we say this every time we chat, but this is just to inject this type of energy into my veins, brother. You fire me up. I'm glad to be still in the fight together. Like I said, it's been
Likewise.
a decade and we're still here building and hopefully making a bigger impact than we were a decade ago, but like still just as much, if not more work to do. So thanks for playing the role you do. Thanks for being a part of and a leader in this community, brother. And thanks for spending some time together today.
Thank you. You're a greater leader in this community than I am. So it's a pleasure to be here and I appreciate the time.
Oh, yeah. Thanks everybody. Cheers.
Thank you.